Hi, everybody. Glad we could take this time to answer some of your comments or respond to them. Jeremy and the team gave you a survey that you've been so gracious to respond to, giving us an opportunity to answer some specifics on where you might be having problems with colored pencil. What have been some of your challenges in the past? Where have been some of the issues you've had? And let's see if we can address a few of those. We're not going to answer everything right now, but let's go ahead and see if we can just help you a little bit to have a better experience with your colored pencils. So Jeremy, why don't you go ahead and let us know what some of those responses were.
Yeah, will do. Thank you, Daryl. Like Daryl said, thank you so much for the responses. It's great to hear from you. And one thing about this survey was we realized that a lot of you are struggling with the same things. So it really helped us kind of structure this series of videos. And the good news is we're going to answer the questions in this video, or at least start answering them. But before we jump in with the presentation, I just want to read a couple of the responses just to give you a sense of some of the struggles people are facing. So one response we got from you went like this. They said, undoubtedly for me, it's trying to determine what colors to combine and how to combine the colors to arrive at a believable and reasonably accurate skin tone. Another response from you said, deciding what colors to use. Everyone has a different skin tone, so that makes it difficult to decide on what colors to use. And yet another response said, when I watch Daryl, I try to predict what color he's going to pick up and overlay, but I'm always amazed to see his choice. So I would have to say that picking the right colors to make the correct shade is my biggest problem. So I don't know if you're picking up on the common denominator there, but skin tone and creating the proper skin tones with colored pencils was a really hot topic. So, and Daryl, I think that's where we need to jump in. You know, how do you, or what is your process for creating a proper skin tone with colored pencils?
Well, being very visual is one of the things you want to really pay attention. And I think one of the best things you can do is just right away create a palette. Go ahead and do a patch. If some of you are familiar with my 5-pencil method, I think you probably know what I mean. Let me just show you a couple things here to just get you familiar with what you have in your set. If I were to make a patch, I always like to go ahead and do the same thing that in the 5-pencil method. It always helps me continue to practice and always visualize dark to light or light to dark. This helps me have that control to be able to have a good saturation, be able to practice having a good clean edge, that dimensional edge that we need so often throughout our drawings. And also to have it fade away so that we can suggest we're coming into the light or to the apex of a curve or contour. Now, when I'm doing these on with a very sharp pencil and I'm trying to mimic those patches, I think this is really good because it helps me be able to continue to practice all of those very important principles and things that are such an advantage. If I came in there quickly and just scribbled on a lot of color here, I can have an advantage to see what the colors are quick. It doesn't give me any practice beyond that, but it does give me a visual. Let's go ahead and just get in a little closer here. In fact, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to trade it over for this one here. And you can start seeing the grain of the paper. I don't know how close I can get without it getting blurry, but you can see the grain of the paper here. When you do the 5-pencil method patches, you avoid much of that grain. That grain comes from the texture, and you'll notice that the ones with the most grain are the darker against the white. If I just put this dark value, darker color, against white, and I am going to have those white specks of paper show through, there's a greater contrast. With the lighter colors, I don't have that so much. And yet, if I use the side of my pencil or I just wanted to get something on the paper quickly, even in the lighter colors, you'd probably see that there's still, the grain showing through. Well, this is okay. I wanted to just be able to show you some of the opportunities we have with color erase in that, let's just take this cotton bud here. I can take this and smooth it out to a large degree. And I can get some of that extra pigment or whatever it is, and you can see how the whites are cut down a little bit. Well, I can do the same thing with my brush. I can come in here and I can gradually cast some of that extra value into the white and soften it up a little bit. This helps me get a better read on what the color is and helps me layer them a lot better. The waxy pencils often will make it harder, to do that because they go on very grainy. They're very waxy and they start getting a buildup on the high points of the paper. And then you can't blend it so easy. There's some solvents and some different tricks that you can use, but it's not as easy and quick as some of the opportunities we have with color erase pencils. And so this is something that I can either take down like that, or I can tap off the tops if I regulate how much pressure there is, and I can take off some of that grain just like I would graphite. But this is one of the things that I would do. I would go ahead and create a palette. Now, this doesn't have every color that's in the palette, and if I was going to start off with color erase to make it even better for you, or it's not necessary to get every color, but I would not go with the 12 set, I would go with a 24 set because it gives you some of the ones that are at least in the group that will help us create some of the skin tones, some of those warmer values instead of some of the more brilliant colors they have in the palette. Now, obviously, when you have some of these amazing, like polychromos and the Prismacolors, you'll have 160 colors or something like that. They're trying to make a color for every occasion. Well, I think this is a great exercise to find out what can we use out of the pencils and the palette we have and get used to that and find out what we can pick out as some that we can layer together to create our skin tones. And I think a good exercise is to realize just how much you can do with, say, 4 colors. The 4 colors here are the flesh or the peach. Sometimes the manufacturer has changed and they bought out color erase, so you'll maybe have a flesh. It's named flesh in one set and it's named peach in the other. And then I have a pink, and then I have a terracotta, and then I have a brown. Now, each one of these isn't as intense as it could be, because if I bore down, then I would not only be coming up with something that is a much more solid color, but one of the advantages of Prismacolor is that I can do these in transparent layers. Well, this starts opening up my palette and the possibilities tremendously, because instead of 24 colors, I can probably do almost an unending number of colors and hues. And I don't want to have pink be so dominant that I'm stuck with that right away. This is what would be if I just really scrubbed in a color and made sure that I got rid of all the white spacing. But believe it or not, these are both the same color. But I'm in control with this one, and this would be something I'd rarely ever do. So let's just see what the terracotta is. These are some of those wonderful colors that are going to be able to do a flesh tone and many variations of that flesh quite well. Look at how different that one is. The brown one. This is the one that I think was mentioned in there that is often good for a shadow, but I wouldn't want to go ahead and have this brown dominate. And it almost starts looking like it's almost in a gray or a graphite category. And so I find that I can do some of the shading I want to do if I do it very carefully and just almost, like I say, breathe on the value. Just casting a little bit of value. This has some brown over that. And you can see there are two different colors already. And if that isn't necessarily exactly what I want, I might find out that I'll go back to the terracotta or do that initially over that flesh tone or peach. And I'll be able to get something that's a little bit warmer. Maybe like somebody that's been out in the sun a little bit more. And this goes to that other question. You're trying to anticipate what I might be able to, what I would be choosing to create a certain color, and it kind of fools you because what I'm actually doing is all four of these together actually can create something very much like this. Something that is, not yellow, not the yellow qualities that this flesh tone has in it. If I just used that, it would be pretty dominant, and we wouldn't want to necessarily have that for a face, and we wouldn't want to have the pink for a face. But this has all four of the colors that I've chosen for my palette. Now, what I can do to shift it a little bit is I'm looking at, I'm going to go with the lightest one, and that is probably my yellow. That would be my base. If I started out with the dark one, it'd be very difficult because they tend to be somewhat transparent. It'd be very difficult for me to have too many options. I could maybe warm up the brown instead of just having it be pure brown like on here. I might be able to warm it up a little bit, but I don't want to have that be dominant because what happens with colored pencils so often is they're not opaque enough. But you can see that's really starting to warm up. Maybe I should have just done half of it so you could actually see. But these are opportunities for me to change the hue of this a little bit. But I will maybe come back and add just another touch. Just breathe on a little brown so that it doesn't start clumping up and becoming dominant. And then it's something I can't get off because once you get too intense with it, we just have brown. That's about all I can do except for changing the flavor of it just a little bit. But I can come in and add maybe just a touch more pink in here. It's not that. It's this added on to a peach and a terracotta and a brown. And I'm saying, visually, I think I want it just a little rosier. So that gives me the opportunity to maybe what you think is fooling you a little bit when you're trying to guess. I might come back and just visually say, I want it to have that rosier look, a little bit more of a blush on his cheek. And so I'll come back in and I'll just very, very lightly, because I want to be in control, I'll just go in very, very lightly. And it's amazing how that light little transparent layer that I just put on there will just shift it just enough to where now I have something that's very believable. Now, I use that the flesh tone underneath much of this drawing. And so it gave me that place I can go back to. If I wanted to maybe tap off something I got a little darker, I could tap it off and I'm left again with that first layer. Or I could tap it off even more and come up with more of the white of the paper, showing through. So these are some of the things that I like to be able to do to be able to manipulate the kind of outcome that I want with the colors that I want by layering. And I don't think that all the colored pencils are going to be as good at this. It's because these are so dry and I can actually brush them around and also use a cotton ball if I want to. I could go ahead and soften them up with that if I wanted to. But I like to try and use the point of my pencil and really just carefully take those nice fine strokes and create my textures that way. It just gives, I think, a very nice, fresh, but good coverage to the paper and gives me a good foundation. And then again, as I build those layers, I can look down through and still see the influence of that original color. I also learned many years ago when somebody would ask me to do something for an illustration or a magazine or an advertisement, and it came out so different than what I had expected because I didn't realize, especially at that time, that instead of putting it on a scanner like you may have at home when you want to scan your drawing, there was a special camera they used to use. It was a litho camera, and sometimes that camera would completely ignore some colors and look down through the one at the bottom. So it was really good to start understanding what colors to use and what some of these colors were that would almost be invisible to the camera. Sometimes they would even use certain blue pencils to make notes right on a piece of artwork, because the camera wouldn't even see the notes, but it would be good instruction for the person that needed to be able to copy this and get it ready for printing. So there's a lot of things that you kind of trip over along the way. They just present themselves, and you don't realize until later, what a wonderful thing that was for me to experience. And you'll find that even mistakes are great for that. They are going to give you an education that you will never have if you're going to lay down everything perfect. You'll know what doesn't work and what does work, and what you might want to do a little less of and what you might want to do a little more of, and get acquainted with your colors, find out what they'll do on a scrap piece of paper, and make those little patches and go over them, maybe even partially with a different color, so you can see what it was before and what it was after. So you can start registering in your head and developing this library of what you think you can do to achieve what you're seeing. Be very visual. Just get used to looking at it. It usually doesn't come just naturally. That was really my introduction into color when I was young, and I thought it was exciting, but I'd always worked in black and white, and so it was just a great transition for me, because I still felt like I was in control and could still manipulate things and carefully approach an outcome and then intensify it when I was sure that's what I wanted. So maybe that will help answer a few of the questions there.
Yeah, I think it does for sure. And it was really great to see how you bring in those different colors and the different layers and things. But I'm wondering if you could you kind of draw a little patch of skin for us and kind of illustrate how those layers work together?
Sure. Let's go ahead and take those particular order. Let's just take these for instance. It's very possible that I don't want this yellow influence through there. In most cases, I think it'll work well, whether it's a very dark-skinned person from India or Africa, or whether it's somebody who has maybe a little bit more of a, let's just call it a tanned look, somebody that's very pale, many Europeans and Asians often have very, very light skin. And so what do you want to do in that case? I certainly don't want to go past it. So let's go ahead and just see what happens. I think also, let me just mention this. It's always good to have a good surface to work on. And as many of you know, I work on the 300 series for the most part. I've worked on so many different types of papers, some that are several times as expensive, just almost too expensive to expect to have a good supply. And so I settled on the 300 series Bristol vellum from Strathmore. And also when I'm looking at it, I want to always check it with the light. And I've shown in my videos how to do that. But if you have the light coming in from one direction, you'll cast a shadow on the texture. And it will be a little longer shadow, and you'll be able to see it more if you have the light off to an angle. If you have it shining right directly at it, you're not going to see it, because the light's going to shine right into all the pits and the tooth, and you're not going to see it. But I like to usually go on the back side. It might be well to actually go on the rougher side with the colored pencil, as I have an opportunity now to have a preference. I often like to use a board, and you can see this is there's many companies that make this, but this is Strathmore, and it's a 400 series or 500 series illustration board, and it's not the only one. It's expensive, but I think it's worth it if you really want to do a nice piece. Yeah, it's the 500 series, and it's the heavyweight with the regular surface, which is really like a vellum surface. It has more of a texture. This one is smooth. We really don't want to have smooth because we need something to scrape that lead or whatever you want to call, the makeup of a colored pencil off, the same as you would with graphite. You need that to scrape off and lay on the texture. If you have something too smooth, it's going to skip and slide, and it's not going to get the full intensity of a color, and also it will break down over time. Now, that's the same thing when I'm doing a light application. I get to maintain the texture of the paper. It's really great. If I start pressing down to make sure I'm saturating it this way, then I've just mashed down my tooth and for the most part don't have very many options left because my texture is gone. In fact, I could probably feel it as I come across here that it's smoother where the pencil is and where it isn't. And so I really want to guard the texture all I can. So let's go ahead and come on to this board, and I'm going to lay down that peach. Just I'll do my tapered, angled stroke here, and I'm going to start working towards lighter. It doesn't have to be fancy. I can see when there's gaps. I'm just going to reach right back in there and fill a gap, but I do want to pay attention to it getting lighter and lighter and lighter, and always have the opportunity to practice a range of value like this, because it's an advantage for so many reasons. There's almost nothing that is perfectly flat when you're drawing it, and even a flat surface will have some variations in it. So I like to be able to show where it might be getting lighter and or it is contoured. And both of those things are going to be more an advantage to me than to just scrub in a color and have it become non-dimensional, perfectly flat, not suggesting how light works or the curve of something. And I like to be able to come back here lighter, and not really see where it ends. And you can see I'm going back. You're not going to do it perfect each time. If you can do it almost perfect the first time, well, then more power to you. I have often been able to do that as well. But if it isn't going to work that way, then just reach back in, with that sharp pencil and fill in the gap. But I'm not going so strong with my strokes that all of a sudden I'm putting a dark streak through here. And you can see how dark it could get. If I'm not careful, I could really make a dark streak through that. It would show. But I want to regulate the pressure as part of the 5-pencil method approach. And that way, again, I always have something I can add. I always have a way to manipulate it. I always have the opportunity to stay in control. And because I want to do these layers, this is going to give me an opportunity, to maybe see how each color is going to be influenced within the range of this color as well. As I come across, I'm going to maybe make, I'll make an opposite direction, or I can just do part of this curve. I hope it's going to be big enough for you to be able to see. Let's see how big I can get. Tell me, Jeremy, if this is going to get too close. Is that too close? Can you see the grain? Okay. Yeah, I just don't want it to have to be so small that you just wonder, what in the world is he doing? You might as well be sitting in a group of 30 people and trying to strain to see ahead of everyone. So this is a great thing about the video, isn't it? We can go ahead and specifically look at things and show things in a way where you don't have to worry about a crowd, standing around and something being so small. But anyway, here's my peach. Now, just to show you, I can come in here and I could soften it up. That works. Even kind of brightens it up a little bit. I could come in again with a earbud or a cotton bud or whatever, and I could do that. I don't want to get down and just really scrub. That really wouldn't work too good. Or wouldn't be as beneficial. I can come in here with my brush and do pretty much the same thing. Now, I wish I had a patch for each one of these methods, because you could see that it would basically do some of the same things. And I have a little bit of graphite or a darker color coming in there because there's something on my brush. So that's probably a mistake on my part. But let's just see now what we might be able to do. Let's see if we want to rosy this up just a little bit. Remember what the potential is. We could either go very soft, very light, and have complete control, or we can go in there thinking we're going to have control and just really put her on there, and we'll have something very dominant. And now we're not going to be able to take advantage of that very well. This would just start looking a very different color than how we're going to lightly layer them together. But I can just say, well, that's a little bit yellow. I think I'll just come in here with just a slight influence of pink. Well, the pink can become very dominant, as that peach or that flesh tone can too. If I just depended on that, you'd probably end up with a very yellow version of a person. And I don't see that, you can always come back in and realize, oh, look how much darker and how much more color we have than what we have a tendency to look at and see on the paper. But it's probably much better for us to stay on this side than it is for us to try and make everything so dark. Because what's going to happen, the darker I get with the lighter values, the darker I'm going to have to get with something else to make sure that it contrasts and gives us the message that this is actually a light value through here. The lightest, the apex of the curve around my finger, I want it to be the lighter value. So now look at how I'm going to have to get darker. Now if I want to put a drop shadow even underneath that to show that it's separate from the paper, I may have to go ahead and go even darker. And so it really forces you to get to that place where things are so dark, they are impossible to put dimension in. And they just become a flat surface again. And if you follow my 5-pencil method, you're probably very familiar with what I'm talking about. So let's come in here with this peach. I don't want the peach to be dominant, but it's not the same as it would be if it was just peach. So peach would be something like this. And it would just be totally wrong. For a face, I mean, who has a face that red? No one. Now, I'm not putting that down as heavy. It's still pretty light. You can see the difference there between this and that. But still, I want to just see if I can just feather something on and also not have it be as dominant as this one color would be. And it's just wonderful to be able to put two together. And now I'm starting to come up with something that's a little more believable. Now maybe I want to have something that doesn't look quite so, maybe it's a little pink to me. I don't want to come back in and put too much yellow over it, that peach or that flush value that seems to have a lot of yellow, especially when you go to scan it or take a picture of it. So I might very well come in with my terracotta. My terracotta is, just like it says, if you ever use terracotta pots for planting your indoor plants, it's very much the same color. It has a tendency to go pretty orange if you're not careful. And yet this together with the other ones actually becomes a wonderful layer and influences everything else and warms it up a little bit, makes it a little more ruddy, earthy, I guess. Maybe I'm not using the same terms that are really describing it to you, but anyway, a warmer tone, yet not so orange because it's got the other colors in there. And it's, again, just a very, very light cast on there. But I can see places where maybe the darker side of the nose and whatever is already starting to show, well, on one side it could be something more along this line, on the other side it could be that line. And then I can come in and say, well, part of it I think should be even darker. So let's just do our patch with the darkest part right up there along that edge. And I don't want to just make a line. And if I get too carried away, this will start going on a little clumpy. So I really want to just breathe this on, just brush this on, making sure I go back and I fill the spaces between the lines so that there isn't something just dominant. And this helps me to start showing that shaded side. Well, you can see, let's just pretend. I realize this is on maybe the underside of a chin. And let's just say this is the edge of the face, and here's the neck down here. Well, if I saw this, I wouldn't want to come in here and just make this dark with the brown. I would want to build it up with the same makeup of colors as I would have had with the other value. I just would end up maybe with a little brown on it instead. So let's come in here. I'm going to put a couple more colors in here. And I can go back the other way and influence the hue. It's just that bottom color would be more dominant. But the order can change a little bit depending on what you're trying to achieve. Sometimes somebody might have a skin that's going to need to have, I can see this for a black person, somebody with a very brown skin. maybe somebody from India or Pakistan or, some of the islands and things are very dark, rich colors, and be able to warm it up. I don't want it to be cold and obnoxious, and I want it to be a compliment to everything else in my drawing. And maybe I need to go ahead and make it a little bit rosier, but I don't want it to just be a pink over the top. I want to come back the other way. Here's that. What color is he going to pick up next? Well, I'm looking at seeing what I need to do to this. So I'm going to come over here, and instead of doing this, I shouldn't have covered up that whole thing. I want to probably build it up the same way. So I would probably do my face with all of the places that I could use this with some variance in intensity, just like I would with my 4H. I still want to be concerned about contour and value, so I'll start hinting that place is a little bit darker than another, and then I'll come in with my next one, my pink. Let's just say if I'm going to follow the same order, this is still going to be under the neck now, under the chin. I'm going to come in here like so. This is kind of an odd way. Trying to illustrate something and demonstrate it on camera is a little bit different. But now I can come back in here, and I don't just have that brown because I have all those other wonderful colors showing up through. But the brown could go on too heavy and become very dominant if I'm not careful. And then I just have something like one of you made the comment that it just tends to look dirty. I don't want it to look dirty either. So this is where I might come back in with another one of the colors back over it and warm it back up again. And remember, if a chin is hiding part of the neck, if we're looking at one angle, maybe up a little bit to a person's chin, we're probably going to see a contour. We're going to see no place where our neck is hidden completely. But if the chin is down and we're looking more at this angle, the chin very well could be blocking our view, just like it is here. Here, it's blocking our view of the neck, so we have a clean line. Over here, and I know this is very light, but we can see in and out of the whole entire area. We come up, we come over the chin and go down along the bottom side and into the neck, and it's a contour. It's soft. But over here, it's blocking our view, so we have to have a clean edge. So that is something that I can now manipulate. Let's get it down here.
Hey, and Daryl?
Yeah.
On this topic of darker skin, you hear, and even in some of the responses, you hear, really dark skin referred to as someone with black skin. But I feel like, is that kind of a misnomer? You wouldn't come in with a black colored pencil, would you, and just kind of go black over the top of this?
Oh, no, I would. I stay away from black. Jeremy's got a good reminder here. It's so easy for us to be influenced by the word, or sometimes by what we think we see. And I wouldn't use black unless it was the last thing I had to do to emphasize something. Once in a while, maybe for the pupil of an eye or something, I might have a hint, but I'd still come in carefully and regulate how much of a saturation I'm going to have. Because black, there's nothing on a human body that's black. And to go shading, we'd want to go probably just a darker and darker. Let's come in here and get this. So when I see a dark colored skin, oh, the richness of that skin. Often it's just beautiful color, and we want to make sure that we're making it up of color instead of just going to something that's very black. Black also is going to put it back into a gray form, even when I'm painting and it looks like there is black in my painting or colored pencil, I will try to make that black up of colors. I might use even a blue and all kinds of things in a black area, but I don't want it to look like blue, and I don't want it to look like black, and but it comes across as something rich and dark and made up of, just good stuff. And anyway, I just think it comes across much more alive than to have a flat black. There's a place for black. Boy, I've done I've done thousands and thousands and thousands of pen and ink drawings, and boy, I'll tell you, I love black and white, pure black. But it's not, for me, for something that has all these wonderful, rich colors, and then suddenly there's something contrasting as black. And again, if I was going to use it, there's probably a time and a place. I don't think anything's, out of the realm, but there's got to be a reason. I want to be in control. I want to do it because I want it there. Now, if I wanted this a little richer, I could come in here with my peach. I could warm it up. It's still dark, maybe helping even to give a little more saturation. If it turned out it was a little bit more yellow, I might be able to actually take that layer off by carefully tapping it off because it's on top of the brown, and I can go ahead and cut back on it. I can come back in and lighten up a whole area quite a bit just to give me a fresh start. Maybe I got too heavy with part of it, and I can come in with color erase and I can take a lot of it off. There's many different ways you can do it to give yourself another opportunity, and it's wonderful to not feel like you're defeated. So when you do something wrong, you don't have to say, "Oh, there's no point in starting over. This is going to be a mess." Sometimes those things turn out to be absolutely beautiful pieces of art, and yet I can warm up the brown as I take off this color off the top of it. It's not near as warm and rich as it is right here. It's the same thing up here. This has really gotten very cold, so I could come back in with that original color that I started out with, the flesh or the peach, and I could actually use it as a layer over to take it out of that grayer, look. It's a richer brown now. And so these are some of the opportunities as you practice like this and just try to see what you can do, just playing around and or looking at something and having something to exercise on so that you can start seeing what can I accomplish with these 4 colors. Just 4. And it's better not to think about bringing in something that might be blue. Like say if I came in with, I'm going to use an indigo blue, but if I put any blue on this flesh tone to think I'm going to create a shadow or something, I'm probably going to have something starting to turn green, because what does yellow and blue do? It makes green. And so I have to be very careful and stay out of certain categories. It's probably the same problem you have with a sunset. You may use yellow in the sky and try to put the blue in around it, and where it overlaps it becomes green, and you don't see too many green sunsets. So those are some of the challenges. So you have to decide, how am I going to keep the colors separate and make sure that I'm not giving a different picture than what I'm really looking for. But coming in again with a color over it, you can actually remove that to a large degree and say, oh, I wanted this just a little bit rosier, even in that dark area, and I can do it. And yet you see that I'm just influencing it. I'm not changing the color. This doesn't just become pink unless I was to really get in. Let's just see if we could make this pink. I guess if I really pressed on there, you can see what would happen. I guess there's a time and place for whatever color that's making up, but I still feel like I want to be in control, because if I come in here and I try and get that off, it's not going to come off nearly as well as it would if I had just brushed on, just feathered on my colors and stay, oh, I need a little of this, I need a little of that, just like you would when you're cooking. I think it needs just a little bit of salt. I think it needs a little bit of this seasoning or that. And you have the opportunity to do that instead of just committing yourself and ruining the whole entire meal because you got carried away. And so I hope that helps a little bit. I don't know, Jeremy, whether you have anything else right now, but these little samples, even though they're little patches, might help you get a little bit of a feel. Look at the difference. Look at this is just our peach or flesh over here. And look how different it looks with the 4 colors, combination of them. So anyway, Jeremy.
Yeah, I think that was hugely helpful. But, where it really matters, we want to hear from you. Feel free to leave us comments below this video and let us know if that helped you, or if you still need some more clarification. And Daryl, before we go, I have probably a little more of a personal question for you. Watching you do this, you make it look so easy. But I want to know, when you first started drawing with color, what were some of the biggest issues that you faced, or some of the biggest frustrations for you?
Well, it was more just getting used to the colors. I'm used to seeing red, green, blue, yellow, and all the different colors visually, but I didn't know how they were made up, and it was a little intimidating. I made my first entry into color, and that's why I felt like the color pencils was a great opportunity for me, because I could do so much with these particular pencils in putting it on, taking it off, combining them together, depending on the pressure or what was I going to end up with. And so I think one of the challenges was that I wanted to have the outcome that I wanted. And sometimes I thought I did, and then when I saw it printed in a magazine or an ad or a book, it would be quite different. That can happen with graphite too. I found a lot of things influence the outcome that I never anticipated before. And that just comes from practice and practice and practice and paying attention. When something goes wrong, at least what you perceive is wrong, it is a fantastic opportunity to learn. So I just suggest that you do as much as you can, and you don't have to get involved in a whole huge picture if you're not used to it. Really get comfortable with how these different flavors are coming together to make making the dish that you want, and relaying it to food, because it's really a lot of the same thing. I used to ask people, what color do you make to make this color? What colors do you combine? Let me just see here. You all know what a color wheel is. Let's see if I can, make yourself a color wheel. Here's a very, very simple one. Here's something that you can really do to give yourself an opportunity to see color. Now, this isn't really refined. I did a much more refined one, for the class. And yet, you can take your pencils and you can put them all around and, start. These aren't going to be in the right place. But anyway, you can actually start just rearranging your pencils as you think they are going to be, and ignore the colors, because I'm not going to take the time to match all that up. But you can go ahead and put these pencils in the order that you think they should go in. Okay, I think that maybe, that one goes over there. And just keep rearranging them, and then go ahead and do that. But make sure you overlap them, because you're not only going to create this color, you're going to have a different color when it bleeds over in the other one. So the overlap, having a place where it's more pure is one thing. Having a place where it overlaps into the color next to it is going to be another thing. Get used to what it is. Get used to what happens. It's exciting because you have a chance to create, and that's what it's all about. Some people may group different types of colors together, monochromatic. It just goes on and on and on. And so you might want to get yourself a color wheel and just see, what is a complement, what makes a hue, and all those different things. These are things that anybody should, if they really are serious about it, get familiar. There's nothing like just being totally ignorant. That's where some of the worst mistakes, maybe you can't back your way out, might come from. But we see that greens are a direct complement to orange, and purple, and some of those to yellow, and green to purple, and those kinds of things. And so we have that opportunity to see how different colors mix, and you can do the same thing. I wouldn't try and memorize this. I want to become familiar with my own palette, and so that's why I suggest go ahead and put down all your colors and start getting them visually. Then maybe you can start rearranging them. Maybe you can see what happens if you bleed this one into that one, or this one into that one. Sometimes this might be a different color in between, depending on whether I put this on top of that one or this one on top of that one. And these are all just fun things to do. Take notes. This is something that I wish that I had done many times. I found a combination that was just right for that illustration or that picture, and then I wanted to do it a year or two later. I never took any notes, and I had to go through all my experimenting again to find out what in the world did I mix together, to make that special color. And so I wish sometimes that I had made better notes, and sometimes when I did, it was just wonderful because I knew exactly what I needed to do to create that particular color. So I just become as familiar with it and have that instinct instead of having to worry about memorizing everything. If that's your forte, then you just memorize away. There's all kinds of books on color and all kinds of things that can happen. This is just I just realized this. This is a sample I did to show what happens when you spray color ray. Sometimes it'll change the colors. Look at how different this color is than that. This is the original color, and this is when I sprayed it. This is when I got too carried away with my workable fixative, and it dissolves the pigment. And look at how different some of these are. There's just an amazing how much more intense they are. So there's a certain way to putting on the spray too, which I have in some of my videos that will help you not all of a sudden have a train wreck when you thought your picture was just right and now you wanted to preserve it. So I went and cut this in half and sprayed one, and I didn't spray the other one. And then don't forget, I really think it's worth it for you to do your own color wheel. And don't worry about, unless it's just something, again, you want to be able to study. Don't worry about trying to duplicate everything here, and memorize all that stuff. See for yourself what colors you're going to create because you put this and that color together. Everybody's colored pencils are going to have just a little bit different hue, a little bit different variation of a color. Everyone has a different set of colors for skin tones, and it's good for you to get used to what you can do with those. The waxier ones, like with Prismacolor, they're going to be almost impossible to get off. And so when you start trying to layer them, you're going to have a harder time because they're very opaque. You might be able to see, I know I'm not being as careful, but still, they will be more opaque. So it's less and less of a chance for you to blend them together well and end up with the color you want. Some people are masters at figuring out what the idiosyncrasies are of Prismacolor, and some of the other ones that have a very high waxy content. The wax, it makes it so you can't get it off as well. You can't experiment as much, except to just start over with another patch. And so I've used these three colors already, and this is quite different than I would have expected. And I can't really do a whole lot about it. Let's go ahead and see if we put pink over here, what it's going to do. Well, we'd have to find out. This to me is starting to look pretty dirty. Doesn't look so rosy to me. But I want to find that out. I want to know. Some things may go into making a brown that you never expected to happen. And you don't want to have that happen in the middle of a face when you've been so careful to make it fresh and a lifelike quality to it. So it's good to do your experimenting and or have a way to back up. Because when I have a way to back up, I can go ahead and I can even take it all the way down. I mean, not all the way, but quite a bit. And I can have something I can actually start over. You can't do that with this. You might get some streaking, but it isn't going to come off very well because it's so waxy. So anyway, a great opportunity for you to get acquainted with your colors is start practicing on a side sheet. Even if you're working on a drawing that you want to be nice, you want to keep, it's still good to have your sheet, another piece of paper like it. It's that you can continue, doing your little experimenting, just making sure if I put it in this order, what am I going to come up with? If I put it in this order, what am I going to come up with? What kind of a hue? And remember that if you can, it's good. Canson, Strathmore, many different companies make a surface that's very much like our 300 vellum Bristol, and so it gives you enough tooth The board probably helps it hold up a little better because once it goes smooth on you, then you don't have as many options as you did before, and the pencil won't go down as well. So it's nice to have this be a little bit more rugged and durable. So anyway, I hope. Sometimes I get to talking. I'm not sure whether I'm on the track you intended me to be on or not. But anyway, I hope I'm sharing something that is valuable to you and will be something that's practical that you can put to use.
Yeah, no, lots of great information there. And I mean, you heard it yourself, folks. Even Daryl had some struggles there starting out with colored pencils and working with colors. So I hope you can take some of this information to heart and just start practicing. I think just doing it is going to exponentially.
Yes.
Yeah, so next up in the next video, that's part 2 of this 3-part series, we're going to address another pesky colored pencil portrait drawing problem. And that's realism, or better yet, getting the most realism out of your drawings. That's capturing the depth and dimension and contours. It really boosts the wow factor and get people interested in your work. So Daryl will share some common traps to avoid and some tips and tricks to help you get the most out of every drawing. So thank you very much for watching, and Daryl, thank you again for talking with us.
No, you're welcome.
And we'll be back in just a couple days with another video. So take care.
Thanks for letting me share with you.